Today, we are having a conversation with a washed-up B-movie actor turned mediocre pandemic runner, someone near and dear to my heart. Please welcome Midlife Runner.
Wow. Well, that's a very flattering introduction. Thank you. Do we have to leave the B-movie part in there?
Absolutely. To start, you run, you're on YouTube, and you're actually kind of funny.
Oh, thank you. I think.
Are you aware that there's already a funny person in the running space on YouTube and his name is a serious runner?
Yes, actually, I'm subscribed.
Good. Yeah, because it's an ironic name. His name. He's actually very funny.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's not like his real name. His real name is Stephen Ganoza.
Okay, regardless, you know there can't be two funny runners in the running space on YouTube, right?
Obviously, there can never be two funny people in the same room, period. It's against the laws of physics.
Really? Was that Newton?
Probably. He's got so many. Are you going to ask me any actual running questions?
Did you run in high school?
Oh, no. The only thing I did in school was a bunch of drugs and smoke.
All right, so no running history.
No, my story is very Rich Rollian. Like I got sober at the age of 30, and then even though I didn't find running until about the age of 40.
Sober from alcohol. So like you don't drink?
No, I'm allergic.
You're allergic to alcohol?
Yeah, every time I drink, I break out in handcuffs.
Was that another joke?
Yeah, I've never been arrested.
Okay, so you say that your story is a lot like Rich Roll, but you've never qualified for Kona, and you don't have a #1 smash podcast.
Yes, exactly like Rich Roll, but without the success.
Okay, moving on. So why or how did you get into running?
Well, the short answer is basically COVID. That pandemic hit, and I thought that if I ran around my neighborhood a bunch, then my lung capacity would increase and I'd have less of a chance of dying a COVID death.
And so what's the long answer? Can we unpack that a little bit?
Well, like most people, I never really enjoyed running. So in my gym bro days, I would go to the treadmill twice a week and run for like 20 minutes because I thought this would be the amount of time that I needed to run in order to live to 100.
Sounds legit.
That's actually how I found out what a 5K was, because I had a 5K setting on the treadmill and I found out that was actually 3.12 miles.
So you would do the 5K. How fast did you run it?
Well, when I started, I would try to just put it at a number 7 and run the whole thing, and then eventually 7.5, and then I think I got up to about an 8, which would have been like a 23 or 24 minute 5K.
Weak.
Yeah, so then the pandemic hits and the gyms close, and so I had to measure out my block, and I ordered some running shoes, and I just tried to get faster at 5K.
What running shoes did you buy for your first pair of running shoes?
Well, in fairness, I hadn't found YouTube yet. I just remember thinking ASICS was like this really good running shoe company. So I got online and I found something called a Cumulus, and I ordered a pair of those in neon yellow.
For the 5K distance, your first pair of shoes was the ASICS Cumulus.
Yes, yeah, I know. It sounds bad, but you have to understand, I hadn't found YouTube yet, right? In fact, the first time I found it was like the next day. I was talking to my wife about these running shoes and all this stuff and about getting into running. And she showed me a video from someone named Natasha Ocean. And the video was about running form. And I just remember thinking like, wait, you can run incorrectly? There's a wrong way to run? Like I had no idea.
Right on. So would you say that Natasha Ocean was your first running coach?
Yes.
Okay, so you're trying to get faster at the 5K. Did you follow a training plan at all?
No, it sounds a little bit weird, but I didn't know you're supposed to train for races. So like I just went out there a couple times a week and ran a 5K as fast as I could.
You were so green.
Yeah, I was a beginner, literally.
I'm so embarrassed for you right now. Oh, okay. So when did you transition into longer distances?
Well, I remember the day actually. I had this idea. I wonder how long that I can run at like a pretty good effort, but not like really hard, before I just got tired. Like I know I can't run forever, but like at what moment is my body just like, okay, we're done? And that number ended up being 11 miles. And then when I got to 11 miles, I was like, well, I know 13's a thing and it's a half marathon. Why don't I just finish that out? So I finished that out at a much slower pace.
So what was your time?
According to my Nike Run app, it was 1 hour, 48 minutes, and 40 seconds.
So did you fuel at all for the run?
No, I didn't know anything about fueling at the time. I think I had some Gatorade, but it was an evening run. I came home, I got a snack, I took a shower, and I went right to bed. I woke up in the middle of the night just with the sweats drenched, and I think I was sore for like a week after that.
Let me guess, you swore you would never do that again.
Yep. And then my sister's husband,
Also known as your brother-in-law.
yeah, also known as Mark, he introduced this book to me. It was a Hanson's half marathon book, and I read it, and that's when I realized, oh, there are training plans. You can train for a race. It also had this thing about easy running, because up until that time, all my runs had just kind of been in the gray zone.
Interesting. So you followed the beginner plan?
Absolutely not. No, Obviously, I just ran a half marathon time trial. I clearly was not a beginner anymore.
Right, yeah, and how'd that turn out for you?
The next half marathon time trial attempt was 1 hour, 47 minutes, and 30 seconds.
Well, that's disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty bummed out, but I was excited to start something new. So like a week after this half marathon time trial, this was like September 2020, a guy named Floris Gierman had infiltrated my algorithm talking about this Maffetone Method. So a week after that half marathon time trial, I started into low heart rate training.
Interesting. Okay, now we are going to pivot. I don't want to lose half the audience with all your Maffetone stuff.
But it's how I got faster.
Yeah, we'll come back to it. But first, I just need some clickbaity sound clips. What is the worst shoe brand?
Reebok. Terrible. All day.
Fantastic. I'm going to use that.
No, okay, seriously, the Float Ride Energy one of my favorite daily trainers. I think I went through like 3 pairs in my first year of running, and I just think as a whole, the company doesn't have a whole lot of variety.
I'm going to leave that part out.
Skechers suck.
That's a keeper.
Yeah, ever since they started putting speed bumps in the middle of their shoes.
Hates Skechers.
Hoka, it's another one. My feet really just don't get along with their shoes. I've tried the Carbon X, the Rincon, the Bondi.
Well, have you considered that you have poor running form?
No, Natasha Ocean taught me everything that I need to know.
Okay, favorite shoe companies, go.
Well, to be fair, I don't get to try all of the shoes from all of the brands, so I'm not a shoe tester, but I will say I oscillate between ASICS and New Balance. Most recently, New Balance.
Do you listen to music when you run?
Only for workouts. So like when I do my easy running, I oftentimes just listen to podcasts or YouTube, and occasionally I will raw dog it.
Wow, you monster. So what podcasts? What YouTube?
The usual suspects, everybody in the running space, Believe in the Run, Kofuzi, Edd Bud, Floberg, blah, blah, blah. I really actually listen more to whatever the algorithm throws me. Submersible stuff, which then leads to Titanic, which leads to natural disasters and the Challenger.
How many different times did you hear the phrase catastrophic implosion?
Maybe 58,000 times.
Did they ever once reference implosion without the prefix catastrophic?
No.
Okay, which running YouTubers do you not watch?
Oh, come on, man. Don't be dramatic.
Well, I think I speak for everybody when I say that we all want the tea.
Do you say things like that? T, Riz, receipts, mid, peak, because you're trying to sound younger or because you're trying to be ironic?
Irony is our friend. Are there any running YouTubers that you do not watch?
Yeah, I don't know. Ben is running. Ben Parks.
Wow, interesting. Is that because they're so much faster than you, or because their name is Ben?
Are Ben.
What?
Are Ben.
What?
Because their names are Ben. You said because their name is Ben.
Yeah, right. Which is it?
It's are Ben. Their names are Ben.
Yeah, no, I get it, but why don't you watch their channel?
Channels. Why don't I watch their channels?
You know what? This is a very weird hill to die on.
Yeah, and it's not because your question was stupid. Why would I not watch their channels because their names are Ben? Like why? What do I have against the name Ben?
I don't know. It seemed like a good question at the time.
Let's just return to the running questions, please.
Oh yeah, sure. By all means. Why don't you just do my job?
Stop being silly. So, Maffetone.
Maffetone, quite the character. Can you keep this part brief?
Absolutely. So the Maffetone method is really running by low heart rate. I went and bought a sexy chest strap and I started running around my neighborhood. Every day I ran between 140 to 130 beats per minute. My average pace was about a 10, 15 to 11 minute mile. After 2 months of running all easy miles, my pace at that same heart rate went down to about a 9 minute and 10 seconds average.
So you got better at running slower.
Yes, and according to my Garmin watch, which I got on Facebook Marketplace for $65.
What a flex.
My VO2 max went up from the 40s into the 50s.
Even though those VO2 max numbers are trash.
Right, not completely accurate, but showing that I am still improving just by running easy every day as a beginner.
Right. And so when did you start running fast again?
Well, with the Maffetone method, you are supposed to start building in some speed work after a block of just easy running. And so for me, after a couple of months, I was out on a run. It was a night run. I had 10 miles on the slate. I wasn't running as fast as I would have hoped. Progress isn't always linear. And so out of frustration, when I got to mile 5, I decided to do the next 4 miles at about 15 beats higher, something closer to marathon pace effort, just to kind of see what that average pace would be per mile. And then on the 10th mile, on the last mile, I just went all out and I ran a 6:14 mile, which was a pretty massive PB for me on the 10th mile on a day that I didn't have it.
Congratulations, rookie.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So then like a few days later, I did a 5K time trial and I ran that in 20 minutes and 14 seconds, which was like a massive PB. It was like over a minute for the 5K. And so then the following week I decided, I'm going to go back and do another half marathon time trial with no training block. And I ran a 1 hour, 39 minute and 58 seconds.
So let me get this straight. You ran easy for 2 months and you shaved off 7 minutes and 30 seconds from your half marathon time.
Yes, that's correct. But unfortunately, when I did the half marathon time trial, I got injured. I tweaked my glute med.
Interesting. So would you say that you were butthurt?
Haha, very funny. No, I got hurt because when I was doing the Maffetone method, to be honest, like most days, I was running so slow that I quit warming up, I quit cooling down. And so when I built in the speed work again, my body just wasn't ready for it because I didn't reincorporate the warm-ups and the cooldowns.
And how long were you out?
I was out for 2 months and then I got COVID, after which I started the Hanson Half Marathon plan again for my first official race because during COVID, all the races were shut down. And the first one back and my first official race was the Austin Half Marathon.
Awesome. But this time you did the beginner plan, right? You did the beginner plan.
Okay, to be fair, at this point, I've already done 3 half marathons.
Time trials. You've never even raced a race.
True, very true. However, the Maffetone method allowed me to increase my weekly mileage up into the 60s. And now the easy pace that I was running the first time through the Hanson's book was now actually my easy pace verified through the Maffetone method. So that 9 minute, 3 second easy pace from my first blocks was accurate. You get me?
Yeah. So how'd you do?
1 hour, 34 minutes and 39 seconds.
At the Austin Half Marathon?
Yeah. In April of 2021.
That's a hilly course.
Are you calling me a liar? Dude, you were there. So after that, I finally came around to doing the one thing that I told myself that I would never do, run a marathon.
That's so great. So being a beginner, having never covered the distance before, your goal for your first marathon was just to complete the distance, right?
Boston qualifier.
Boston qualifier.
Yeah, no, mistakes were definitely made, especially on race day, but also in training.
Oh, do tell.
Okay, well, for the training mistakes, I got injured a couple more times. So I signed up for the San Antonio Rock and Roll Marathon in December and it was April. And going into the taper for the Austin Half Marathon, I started to get runner's knee. So I took some time off in May and then over the summer, I fell back in love with the Maffetone method to build my aerobic base. And I ran 130 miles in 10 days. And I thought, well, if I'm running easy every day, I can't possibly get shin splints. But I got shin splints.
Would you say that these were beginner mistakes?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. And for the training, did you follow some sort of beginner plan?
No, I didn't actually have a plan.
I'm sorry, you didn't what?
I didn't follow a plan. I just did mostly math miles and then some races here and there.
And how did that work out for you?
Terrible. I hit a wall at mile 11 and I walk jogged for like the last 15.
Ouch. So what was your goal and like what did you actually run?
Well, the goal was 3 hours and 10 minutes and I ran 4 hours, 9 minutes and 8 seconds.
Oh, and that's why you always say that you're a 409 marathoner.
Yes, and also why I'm always foam rolling. You gotta get your psychology. You be foam rolling.
Let's pretend that people are still watching this. What other mistakes did you make from the San Antonio Rock and Roll Marathon that you can share with us that maybe other people can learn from?
Okay, where to start? One, I read an article on race weight about a month prior, and so I carb deloaded going into the race. So I had no fuel in the system. Number two, I tried a new product. I thought it was an electrolyte mix, and I think it did have that in there, but it also had caffeine, and which normally wouldn't be a big deal. I'm a caffeine dealer. I work in coffee, but I had already chugged a cold brew. I had way too much caffeine. And number four, the weather was shite. I think it was like in the 70s, 100% humidity. Dew point was in the 70s. And I did not adjust my pace to accommodate for the weather.
Wow. Well, BQ or bust, I guess.
Yeah, well, bust it was. My heart rate after the first mile was in the 180s and I just couldn't get it back down. So like by the time I hit mile 11, my central governor took over and my brain just shut me down and was like, we're gonna walk jog the rest of the way because we don't want to die.
Okay, so to review that, one would be don't carb deload, maybe instead carb load. Don't drink too much caffeine, don't try new products, adjust your pace if the weather is shite.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say like if I had to do it over again, I think I would really focus more on completing the distance and getting used to like the ebbs and the flows of the marathon distance rather than have like some ambitious goal time.
And I like what you said there when you said, if I had to do it again, this is what I would do, versus like telling people what to do. Hey, these are the mistakes I made. Don't do this, don't do that. Because the reality is that most people, when you tell them what to do, aren't going to take your advice. They'll usually do the opposite, if at all, but no one's going to listen to you.
Yeah. Is that really a thing?
It's actually science.
Are you building to a joke? I feel like you're going to joke any second now.
Never. I just note that for me, in my experience, in my past, what I've done is I've subscribed to the channel.
There it is.
Yeah, and since I traditionally also like to support channels, I hit the like button.
Gotta do it for the algo.
For the algo. Okay, now you mentioned, I believe that you said you were in the coffee trade. Did I hear right?
Yes, that is correct. I have been in commercial coffee for over a decade.
What is commercial coffee? I'm not sure I've had any of that.
Commercial coffee is just like coffee shop with a drive-through. There's like super automated machines versus specialty coffee or like artisan coffee, like little coffee shops. Basically everything you think of when you think of a cliche hipster barista with tattoos and tamping their shots and latte art. Now I love specialty coffee. I just happen to work more on the commercial end.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. No, I've had plenty of commercial coffee.
Yeah, most of us have. So I started at Starbucks. I ran a military family store. Eventually, I moved over to Black Rifle Coffee Company when they launched their retail operation. And more recently, at the end of last year, I moved over to start working for a franchise owner who's opening a bunch of what's called Beans and Brews in San Antonio up to Austin. They're based out of Utah, very Starbucks adjacent.
Very cool. How much coffee do you drink a day?
1 cup, one really big cup, sometimes 3 cups.
Fascinating. Okay, well, I want to be respectful of your time.
No, you know what? You can be completely disrespectful of my time, okay?
Really?
Yes, please. Rich, roll me, okay? Make this thing go over 3 hours. I don't want sub 3, okay? Like I want post 3.
Okay. Rich Roll has some guests on his podcast that have climbed K2. And as far as I can see, some days you can barely climb out of bed.
Okay, that was disrespectful.
You asked me to be disrespectful.
With my time, can we continue to running, please?
Yeah, okay. So what happened after the bonk? Let me guess. You signed up for a revenge marathon and then you got too ambitious. You made some more beginner mistakes. You got hurt again. Am I right?
Yeah, actually, I got shin splints again. But you know what? I signed up for the Woodlands full marathon. I was able to switch it to a half marathon, and I did run that in 1 hour and 30 minutes and 30 seconds. I did PB still.
I'd be more impressed with the sub 130, but you know, it's impressive. So when was your next actual marathon?
My second marathon was actually the Chicago Marathon, and that was an event for sure. The big mistake I made in that one was I wore my jacket over my bib because it was a little cold. And when I went underneath the start line, it didn't pick up my chip. So it wasn't aware that I was running. And then the jacket came off by the time I hit the 5K mark, and it picked me up. So when I finished the marathon, my finishing time, according to my Garmin, was like a 3:11, but my official time in the books is like a 3:19 and some change. Hey, it's okay, other me. I wouldn't have qualified for Boston anyway, and I had a really good time.
Did you at least train for this one?
I did. I got a higher running training plan. However, I wasn't able to do it all the way through. I mean, I got most of the mileage done, but that was the training block that I really started to figure out how to combat some of the little niggles and, you know, my body getting a little bit sore. So I don't blame the training.
Okay, so as a beginning runner overall, this is the common theme from this whole episode, is that you made pretty much every beginner mistake you could possibly make. Are there any beginning mistakes that you haven't touched on that you made that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the only one that I left out, I think in the Chicago Marathon, I might have started off a little bit too conservative. My race predictors online said I was probably on pace for like a 3:15 to a 3:18, somewhere in there. And I ran a 3:11. So I don't know how much faster I could have gone in that race, but I do know that I was able to finish strong. And, you know, I felt like I had something left to give in that one.
Interesting. So after Chicago, what was next?
Well, after Chicago was like when I finally took the plunge into YouTube. I had started it a long time ago. You know, my kids were really interested. They wanted YouTube channels. And I was like, no, I'm not going to let my kids on the internet and all that stuff. And then I remember thinking about my parents, like telling me, no, you can't get on the internet. It's 400-pound molester or whatever else. And I didn't know. So I signed up and I just started making talking head Maffetone videos, no edits and cuts. And so I started the channel, and I realized that nobody's watching, nobody cares. You know, my kids just want to make little Minecraft or Roblox videos. So the channel wasn't in existence, but I didn't own any cameras. I didn't shoot anything. I didn't edit anything. And so Chicago was really the turning point. That's when I came back. Kofuzi happened to be doing a video on GoPros and which one was the most economical to buy. And so I bought it.
Okay, so that's cool. Yeah, I know you do race and recaps, but you don't have any race footage from the Chicago Marathon.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, I just used the B-roll from my phone and my wife's phone. I did make a video for the Chicago Marathon, which is entirely way too long.
So then you've been doing YouTube officially for about 9 months then?
Yeah.
And how has that been going?
I am having a blast. I get to be really creative and free because, you know, like I'm not trying to go full-time on YouTube. So like I'm not tied into, you know, a schedule. If I want to post once a week, if I don't, that's okay. You know, if I post twice a week, great. And, you know, my hands aren't tied. I don't have to go create search engine things or clickbaity stuff. I can kind of just make whatever, and I love that.
What do you mean by clickbaity or search engine things?
You see like a picture of me flattened on the ground, all exhausted, and the title is just like, I quit. And then you click on it, and it's like, you know, why I quit, summer grit, believe in the run summer grit, you know, or
I ran for 30 straight days.
How to run farther for longer without getting tired.
I ran Kipchoge's race pace.
Exactly, yes, all of that stuff. I don't have to do it. I have the freedom to kind of just shoot whatever.
Like a self-absorbed conversation with yourself.
Exactly.
Okay, as Rich Roll would say, let's try to land this plane. How many more marathons did you run after Chicago? and how'd you do?
Well, I run 4 marathons total. Chicago was my second one, but after Chicago, I actually hired my old coach back, Hernan, for a half marathon. So I ran the Austin 3M half marathon, and he coached me to a PB of a 1 hour, 23 minute, and 58 second time.
The Austin 3M half marathon, that's the one that's like almost all downhill, point to point, complete cheater course, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Actually, sometimes cheaters do win.
And that was this year, so you've run 2 marathons since then?
Yeah, I know, it sounds crazy, but I was so excited by my result from the half marathon that I signed up for the Woodlands full marathon 6 weeks later, and I actually ran a 3 hour, 5 minute, 27 second time for a PB and a Boston qualifier.
Well, all right. Good job, other me.
Thank you. And for the 4th marathon, it was in Buffalo. I got dressed up like Forrest Gump and I ran it, and it was silly. My time for that one was a 3 hour, 13 minute, and some odd second deal.
Well, that sounds like a really big story. Should we unpack that?
No, it's too long of a story. Basically, I over tapered, and with the time zone change, I was just too tired, and I didn't make the cut.
Okay, well, I guess last question would be, what is next for Midlife Runner?
Well, I have no more races this year from June all the way to December. I am going to be running the Houston full marathon in January of 2024. I will be working with my coach, Hernan, the same guy who helped me to my half marathon PB. After which, I will be going to Boston in 2024 if my 3:05:27 meets the qualification standards. But I will not be running that as an A race. Houston will be an A race. Boston will be for funsies.
Great, and where can people find you?
Well, they can find me right here on the YouTube and on the Stravas. I'll put it in the description below. I follow back. I'm a follow back guy. Thank you for having me on the show today.
No, thank you for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate you. I mean, ever since you called me back and told me you were down, I haven't been able to think about much else. I'm really excited. Been wanting to have you on the show for a while.
Do we have to leave the B-movie part in there?
Absolutely. Why, do you want me to cut it out?
Can we?
Sure.
Evil entity, can you hear me? Is Patrick Swayze there? Are you friends with Patrick Swayze? I'm going to put the baby in the corner. Does Patrick have anything to say to me now?